She walked down the aisle with grace, but hidden in her wedding gown was a flash drive that would expose her groom and her own sister in front of everyone. What was meant to be a celebration became a public reckoning. This isn't just a story about betrayal. It's about courage, truth, and choosing yourself when no one else will. Where are you watching from today? Drop your city in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories that will move your heart and soul. They say you can feel when your life is about to change, like the air shifts just enough to make your skin buzz. I didn't feel it the day Ryan proposed. If anything, I thought my life had finally stopped shifting. I was 34, a quiet school teacher in a small Georgia town where everyone knew your parents, your preacher, and your dentist. My life was simple. I walked to work each morning with a warm thermos in one hand and my lesson plan in the other. The kids at school called me Miss Ellie, and their parents always said I had the kind of calm voice that made kids listen. I liked that. I liked being the kind of woman people could trust. My dream was never big. Just a little house with daffodils by the porch and kids laughing in the backyard. I never craved diamond rings or exotic vacations. Just peace, someone to share morning coffee with, someone who stayed. Then came Ryan Bell. He was 3 years older than me and looked like he had been carved out of confidence and cologne. Real estate agent, always in crisp shirts and spotless white sneakers, like he never had to rush for anything. When he laughed, it bounced off walls. When he entered a room, people turned. And when he looked at me, it felt like the world shrank down to just the two of us. He had this way of speaking to me like I was a miracle that happened to him. God must have really loved me to give me you, he used to say. And Lord, I wanted to believe that. My sister Sadie adored him too. She was 4 years younger and everything I wasn't. Bold, loud, always dressed in something tight or shiny. She had a big laugh and an even bigger online following. But we were close. I raised her when Mama worked late. She used to braid my hair and sneak into my bed after nightmares. She was still doing that when she was 20. We shared everything, until we didn't. The night Ryan proposed, we were at this candlelit restaurant with linen napkins and piano music that floated through the air like perfume. It wasn't my kind of place. I was sweating in a dress I borrowed from Sadie. Ryan kept smiling like he was hiding something, and then, when dessert arrived, he dropped to one knee. I couldn't breathe. The box was silver, the diamond small but radiant. He said my name, my full name, Eleanor Grace. Will you marry me? I covered my mouth, I nodded, I cried. Everyone clapped. Sadie was behind her phone, filming everything, cheering like she had just won a game. The next day, the video was on her Instagram with the caption, "My sister said yes." It had over 10,000 likes by noon. People from all over town stopped me at the market, at church, even outside my classroom. I remember staring at that ring later that night, holding it to the light like it was a piece of the moon. My heart was full, and still something small whispered inside me. I hope this is real. I whispered it out loud. God, please, let this be real. From that day on, my life became a checklist. Wedding venue, booked. Bridesmaids' dresses, lavender and cream. Sadie, maid of honor. She acted like she was the bride, spinning in dresses, critiquing caterers, calling my engagement a fairy tale with filters, but I didn't mind. That was Sadie. Loud, loving, always center stage. Ryan? He was everything a groom should be. He called me his queen. He sent me breakfast and flowers. When I lost weight from all the planning stress, he kissed my forehead and said, "I won't let you lift a finger once we're married." One night, we were gathered at my apartment. Me, Ryan, Sadie, and my best friend Monica, going over the guest list. Sadie burst in holding a tub of jollof rice. "Nobody can say I don't care about this wedding," she declared, flopping on the couch. Ryan clapped. "Sadie, you made this?" She rolled her eyes, tossed her curls and said, "I've been cooking better than Ellie since I was 10. Everyone laughed. I laughed too. But something about the way Ryan looked at her, just for a second, made the room feel colder. It was a look I had never seen him give anyone. Not admiration, not love. Something more private, more possessive. It lasted barely a breath, but it planted a bruise inside me. That night, as I lay in bed, I told myself I imagined it. "You're tired," I whispered. "They've known each other for years." But the thought stayed. Still, I did what I'd always done. I smiled through it. I baked thank you cookies for the vendors. I went to premarital counseling. I bought a new hairbrush for Sadie because she left hers at my place. I kept believing that if I loved hard enough, everything would be fine. But something had started to shift. A cold current under still water. The day Ryan dropped by to take me to church, I was still putting on my shoes when Sadie ran out ahead of me with a shawl. "Here, Ryan," she said sweetly. "It's cold out. Don't let your pretty skin catch flu." Her fingers lingered on his arm too long, and when I stepped outside, I caught that look again, this time on his face. A softness, a flicker of desire. It vanished the moment I appeared, but I saw it. This time, I didn't pretend I hadn't. That night, I stood at the mirror and looked at myself. My engagement ring sparkled on my finger like it had a secret. I touched it gently. My reflection stared back, uncertain. "Please," I whispered again. "Let this be real. Let this not be a mistake." But deep down, I already knew something was wrong. Very wrong. I just didn't know how much yet. And when I found out, I would wish to God that I hadn't. The morning after that strange look between Ryan and Sadie, I tried to convince myself it was nothing. I cleaned my apartment twice, vacuumed corners no one ever looked at, folded laundry I had already folded the day before. But the image kept creeping back, the way his eyes lingered on her, the softness that didn't belong. I kept hearing Sadie's voice, light and playful. "You better marry him quick, or I might steal him." It had always sounded like a joke, but now I wasn't sure it ever was. Still, the wedding plans pressed on, and I buried myself in them like a woman running from her own thoughts. The invitations had gone out. My mother cried when she saw hers. My first daughter, finally. Ryan's family was thrilled too, sending flowers and gift cards and offering to pay for the decorations. Everywhere I went, people were smiling at me like I was living the dream. But I didn't feel like a bride. I felt like a woman watching her own life from outside a window. Sadie, of course, was in full performance mode. She coordinated the bridesmaids, helped pick out napkin colors, and practiced her maid of honor speech in front of my full-length mirror. "It needs to be moving but funny," she'd say, flipping her hair. "I mean, people expect drama from me." One afternoon, we were at the fabric market together, picking out materials for our traditional outfits. Sadie held up a gold lace and wrinkled her nose. "Too dull. You're not marrying a 70-year-old chief, Ellie." I laughed because it was easier than snapping. "It's classic," I said. "It's boring," she replied, laughing. "We need drama." The market women around us chuckled, calling out, "Fine girls, wedding fever days sweet you owe." I smiled, but something sat heavy in my chest, a quiet, familiar warning. Later that evening, while resting on the couch, I turned to Sadie and asked softly, "Do you think Ryan really loves me?" She froze, just for a heartbeat, then laughed louder than necessary. "What kind of question is that? You've got the catch of the year. Rest, Jar." But she didn't meet my eyes when she said it, and my chest tightened in response. The closer the wedding got, the more uneasy I felt, but I kept pushing forward. I taught my kids at school like nothing was wrong. I smiled through fittings and cake tastings. I replied "thank you 100 times a day to people saying how lucky I was. I was exhausted, but it wasn't the kind of tired that sleep fixed. It was the kind of tired that seeps into your bones when you're pretending too much. Then something small happened. Small, but it cracked everything. Ryan texted that he'd pick me up for our final premarital counseling class. I was still in my bedroom putting on mascara when I heard a knock at the door. Sadie rushed out with a shawl in her hand. "Here," I heard her say to him. "It's chilly. Don't let your fine body catch cold." Her tone was syrupy sweet, like honey left too long in the sun. I stepped out just in time to see him smile at her, an intimate, slow smile that didn't belong to me. His fingers brushed hers as he took the shawl, and even though it lasted just a moment, I saw it for what it was. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed listening to the ceiling fan hum above me, my ring pressing a mark into my skin. I told myself I was overthinking again, that Sadie was just being herself, that Ryan was just being polite. But I couldn't stop hearing her laugh from the hallway. That high-pitched giggle she only used when she was flirting. The next morning, I couldn't find my phone. I needed to confirm the floral arrangement with the decorator, and I was already late. "Sadie," I called from the kitchen, "can I use your phone real quick?" She was outside hanging laundry and shouted back, "Yeah, it's on my bed." I walked into her room, her pink iPhone lying face up, unlocked. As I reached for it, a message notification popped up. I can't stop thinking about last night. I miss your mouth. I stood there frozen. My heart dropped, then slammed back into my chest. I tapped the message. The sender's name glowed across the top of the screen, Ryan Bell. No. No. My fingers moved before my brain could stop them. I opened the thread. My eyes scanned the screen, catching phrases I wish I could unsee. Last night was fire. She'll never suspect anything. After the wedding, we'll figure it out. You're the one I really want. There were pictures. Him shirtless, her in a towel, a video, voice notes, laughter. I couldn't breathe. My knees gave out, and I sat down on the edge of Sadie's bed, the phone burning in my hands like it had turned to iron. My fingers trembled as I forwarded everything to my own phone. Every screenshot, every recording, every message. Then I placed her phone back exactly where I found it, stood up, and walked out like I hadn't just watched my entire world collapse. Sadie walked in a few minutes later, smiling, humming. "Did you call the decorator?" she asked. "Yeah, thanks." She didn't know. She had no idea that everything had shifted, that I had seen it all, that I was no longer the same woman she'd been lying to. That night, I lay in bed with my phone clutched to my chest like it was a blade. My chest rose and fell in shallow, controlled breaths. I didn't cry out, I didn't scream, but my tears soaked the pillow. I stared at the image of them together in a hotel bed, laughing, his arm draped over her shoulder. Her message underneath: "She'll cry, but she'll get over it. I'm the one who makes you happy." Something inside me cracked, and not the kind of crack that heals. The next morning I stood in front of my mirror. I touched the engagement ring, still gleaming on my finger, and took it off slowly. It no longer felt like a promise. It felt like a lie I had been tricked into wearing. Ryan called later that day. His voice was soft, worried. "Hey babe, you okay?" "I'm fine," I said. I even made it sound convincing. "You didn't text me last night. I missed you. I went to bed early. I was thinking, maybe I can take you out tonight? Just the two of us. Talk, relax a little." "What time?" 6. I agreed. Not because I wanted to see him, but because I needed to. Because I had to look that man in the face and see if he could still lie to me, knowing what I now knew. And more than that, I needed to decide what I would do with the truth I was holding in my hands. Not yet, but soon, very soon. That evening, at exactly 6 o'clock, Ryan pulled into my driveway. His car was freshly washed, his shirt a deep charcoal with delicate embroidery along the collar. Even in a wheelchair, he carried himself like a man who thought the world still bowed for him. He stepped out slowly, balancing with practiced ease, then opened the door for me like he always did. He smiled, that familiar, polished smile, the one that used to make me melt, the one that now made me want to scream. "You look tired," he said, brushing a stray curl from my forehead. "Wedding stress," I replied, climbing into the car. He chuckled as he got back into the driver's seat. "Just think, 2 weeks from now, you'll be my wife." I still can't believe it. Neither could I. We drove to a small restaurant off the main road, one of those quiet places with low lighting and soft jazz playing from hidden speakers, the kind of place meant for proposals, anniversaries, or goodbyes. I wasn't sure which one this would be yet. We sat at a table tucked in the back. He reached across and took my hand, his thumb tracing lazy circles over my skin. It used to comfort me. Now it made my stomach turn. "So," he said, flashing that grin, "how are you really feeling about the wedding?" I watched him closely. "I'm feeling a lot," I said. His brow furrowed just slightly, the way it always did when he didn't get the answer he wanted. "Good feelings, I hope?" I sipped my water, letting the silence stretch. "Do you feel ready?" He leaned back with a confident smirk. "I've been ready since I met you. You're everything I ever wanted, Ellie. You ground me. You make me better." I stared at him, searching for any crack, any flicker of guilt, but he delivered every word like a seasoned actor, smooth, sure, and without shame. "No doubts?" I asked, keeping my voice gentle. "None," he said, squeezing my hand. "Well, maybe one." "What's that?" "That you might run off before the big day," he teased, laughing. I smiled faintly, my lips barely moving. "Would I do that?" He shook his head, still laughing. "You? Never. You're too loyal." I looked at him a moment longer and then glanced away, my throat tight with words I wouldn't let out. Not yet. Dinner passed like a scene from a play I no longer wanted to star in. He talked about the honeymoon, about a beachfront Airbnb he'd found in St. Lucia, about how he couldn't wait to see me in white walking down the aisle toward him. I nodded in all the right places. I asked the questions a loving fiancé would ask. But inside, I was elsewhere, playing and replaying that thread of messages, hearing Sadie's voice in my head like a ghost. She'll cry, but she'll get over it. When he dropped me off, he kissed my forehead and said, "I love you." I didn't say it back. Inside my apartment, I locked the door and slid to the floor, my back pressed against the cool wood. I clutched my phone, opened the screenshots again, and stared at the one where Sadie was blowing a kiss into the camera, wrapped in a red towel. The caption from Ryan underneath said, "Let her think she's the one. You and I know the truth." I didn't cry, not the way I had that first night. Now the tears were quieter, slower, heavier. They came from deeper inside, from the place where innocence used to live. I thought about the mornings I made Ryan breakfast, the times I stood behind Sadie at the mirror, adjusting her hair before a night out. I thought about our shared laughter, our shared clothes, our shared blood. How did we get here? The next day, my Aunt Rose called. "I'm coming early for your wedding, baby," she said cheerfully. "Uncle Terry too. We already bought the wrappers." "Thanks, Auntie," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Can't wait to see you." Everyone was excited. Everyone was preparing. Everyone believed a love story was unfolding. But I knew better. I wanted to tell my mother. I wanted to scream. I wanted to take a hammer to every lie and let the pieces fly. But something held me back. Maybe pride, maybe shame, maybe the fear that no one would believe me. Sadie was the golden girl, the fun one, the favorite, the one who made everything sparkle. And Ryan? He was the man who had charmed an entire town. If I exposed them now, I'd be the one blamed for breaking the illusion. So instead, I started planning something else. That night, while the neighborhood buzzed with the usual weekend chatter, kids playing tag, dogs barking, grills sizzling, I sat on my bed and created a new folder on my phone. I called it Wedding Gift. Inside, I placed everything. The messages, the photos, the audio clips. I transferred it all to a flash drive, labeled it discreetly, and slipped it into the secret pocket of my dress bag. My hands were steady as I did it. My heart, strangely, was not breaking anymore. It was sharpening. They thought they had fooled me. That I'd walk down that aisle, blind and docile, smiling for the cameras, kissing the man who betrayed me, hugging the sister who stabbed me. But I had a different vision. I would give them a wedding day they'd never forget. Not with screams, not with violence, with truth, the kind that burns silently and leaves nothing untouched. As I turned off the light and laid down, the weight of the secret settled in my chest, but alongside it, something else, clarity. For the first time in weeks, I smiled. Not out of happiness, not out of love, but because the power had shifted. And I wasn't the fool in this story anymore. The wedding was now just 10 days away, and to the outside world, I looked like the perfect bride. Graceful, composed, glowing. The woman who stayed even after her fiancé's accident. The woman with the kind heart. I smiled when people called me strong. I nodded politely when they said Ryan was lucky to have me. No one knew I was carrying a ticking bomb in the lining of my wedding gown, a small flash drive that held the truth like a blade, waiting for the perfect moment to cut. Each day passed like a slow performance. I played the role they expected of me. I checked on the caterers, greeted arriving relatives, and picked up my veil from the seamstress with quiet gratitude. My mother was busy rearranging flower vases. My father, too, occupied stocking wine and soda to notice how distant I had become. But Sadie noticed nothing. She floated through the house like a butterfly, laughing, posing for selfies, changing her hair again, this time opting for a sleek, bone-straight wig that hung to her waist. One morning, I sat at my mirror brushing my hair when my phone buzzed. A message from Ryan. "Morning, babe. Heading to Naka for a meeting. Quick trip. I'll call you when I land." I replied simply, "Safe trip." No heart emojis. No I love you. Just a wall between us now that he didn't even realize existed. A few minutes later, Sadie entered my room, phone in hand, smiling like someone with no care in the world. "Your husband sent me fuel money," she grinned, waving her phone. "Guess he wants me to glow for the wedding." I turned to her from the mirror. "Really?" "Yes," she beamed. "You think it's easy to slay on your sister's big day? I need to represent." She flopped onto my bed, scrolling through her messages, legs swinging in the air like a teenager. I'm even thinking of switching up my nails, a soft rose gold this time. I watched her, this girl I used to cradle when she had fevers, who used to braid my hair while we whispered about boys and dreams. She didn't look guilty. She didn't even look nervous. "Where did you two go last week?" I asked casually. "That evening, I was asleep and didn't see either of you until late." She froze just half a second. "Just enough." "Oh, that night?" She laughed quickly. "We just went out for suya. Nothing major." I nodded slowly, locking eyes with her. Okay." She tilted her head. "Why? Are you jealous?" I gave a small smile. "Don't worry. After the wedding, he'll be all mine." Sadie giggled, flicking her wig. "Better hold on tight." I said nothing. Just picked up my earrings and walked out of the room, my hands clenched behind my back. That evening, the house was full. Cousins from out of town had arrived. My aunt was singing while stirring a giant pot in the backyard, and children ran through the halls, dragging balloons and ribbons. The scent of jollof rice mixed with coconut oil and perfume. From the outside, everything looked perfect. Around 7 p.m. my phone rang. It was Ken, one of Ryan's oldest friends. I stepped into the hallway to take the call. "Ellie," he said, his voice shaking, "are you home?" "Yes. Why?" There was a pause. Then he said it. "Ryan's been in an accident, on his way back from Naka. A trailer lost control, hit his car. They just rushed him to Enugu General." For a moment I couldn't move. The hallway swayed beneath me. My breath caught in my throat. "He's asking for you," Ken added quietly. "Please come." I didn't ask more questions. I didn't scream. I just grabbed my bag, ran into the yard, and called out, "I'm going to the hospital. Ryan's been in an accident." Gasps erupted. Plates dropped. My mother shouted, "What? Jesus, is he alive?" But I was already outside, flagging down a tike. I didn't wait for anyone. The only thing in my mind was the image of him bleeding, broken. The same man who betrayed me, now needing me. At the hospital, everything was a blur of white lights and running feet. Nurses whispered behind desks, doctors passed by with urgency etched into their faces. Then I saw Ken, standing near the emergency room door, his shirt stained with blood. I almost collapsed. "Where is he?" I asked, grabbing his arm. "He's alive," Ken whispered, "but they say he may never walk again." I pushed past him and walked toward the room. Through the glass window I saw Ryan, bandaged, pale, his face bruised, his arm in a cast, legs wrapped tightly. Machines beeped steadily around him. When he saw me, his eyes filled with tears. "Ellie," he whispered. I walked in. I didn't cry, I didn't scream. I just took his hand. "I'm here," I said. He squeezed my fingers weakly. "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry." I looked into his eyes. "Don't talk, just rest." But inside me, 1,000 questions thundered. Sorry for what? The accident or the affair? The doctors soon ushered me out. I sat in the hallway, numb. I didn't know what to feel. He had betrayed me, but now he was broken too. The man who once lifted me in laughter now couldn't stand. The man who slept with my sister might never walk again. Later, Sadie arrived at the hospital, running in with mascara-streaked cheeks, yelling, "My baby! Jesus, why him?" She burst into his room, wailing like a widow. I watched her from the hallway. I didn't move. I didn't feel anything for her. Not anymore. The pain had turned cold inside me. The next day, Ryan's mother arrived. She hugged me tight, sobbing. "Thank you, my daughter. Thank you for standing by him." I nodded, silent. She didn't know the full story. No one did. That evening, the doctor called a meeting. He explained the spinal damage. "We've done our best," he said gently, "but Ryan will not walk again." His mother collapsed into a chair, weeping. Ryan cried like a child, and I stood frozen. I looked at him, knelt beside his bed, and whispered, "I'm still here." His eyes were full of disbelief. "I don't deserve you." "I made a promise," I said, "and I'm not going anywhere." But even as I said the words, a war ignited in my heart. Was it love that kept me by his side? Was it pity? Or was it strategy? I didn't know. But I knew one thing for sure. No matter what came next, I would not walk away. Not yet. Because the story wasn't over, and the final scene would belong to me. 2 days after Ryan was discharged from the hospital, the wedding was just 6 days away. He was home, pale and bandaged, confined to a sleek custom wheelchair that his uncle had rushed in from Atlanta. Despite his condition, he kept talking about the wedding like nothing had changed. "I know I can't walk you down the aisle," he whispered to me once, "but I can still wait for you at the altar." I just can't lose you too, Ellie. Please. I nodded gently. You won't, I said, my voice soft like a lullaby. He looked at me like I just promised him heaven. But he didn't know. None of them did. I watched them all as they fluttered through preparations. Ryan's mother arranging fruit baskets for the ceremony, my father drawing up last-minute seating charts, my cousins filling goodie bags and arguing over ribbon colors. The house was full, the air electric. There were whispers of admiration from neighbors. Ellie's such a good woman. She stayed. Even after the accident, she's an angel. People praised me, posted about me. The church even uploaded my photo on their page with the caption, "When love stands strong." But it wasn't love anymore. It was strategy. It was silent war. And the weapon was truth. Sadie didn't seem to feel any of the tension. She breezed in and out of the house with that same glow, smiling, giggling, pretending nothing ever happened. She helped dress Ryan, fed him soup, stroked his head when he looked tired. Once, I caught her leaning down to wipe his mouth, whispering something into his ear that made them both laugh. I stood in the doorway, watching. Neither of them noticed. I didn't confront her. I didn't scream. I just kept smiling, like a woman blind to everything, when in fact I saw it all. Every glance, every whisper, every fake act of concern. What they didn't know was that I still had the flash drive tucked away in a silk pouch inside the lining of my wedding dress. I had tested it on my laptop. The slideshow played perfectly. Photos, texts, voice notes, a soft instrumental score underneath. It was calm. It was damning. It was ready. 3 days before the wedding, I stood by the window of my room, watching the yard fill up with tents and plastic chairs. Pink and gold ribbons fluttered in the wind. 2 cows had been slaughtered behind the house. The air was thick with smoke, laughter, and music. My mother was directing people like a general, her hands covered in flour. My father was unboxing drinks. It looked like joy. It looked like celebration. But to me, it felt like a stage being built for an execution. I turned back to the mirror. My face was calm, almost too calm. My skin glowed. Not from happiness, but from resolve. I reached for the flash drive again, held it in my hand for a moment, then slipped it back inside my gown's pocket. No one would see it until it was time. Until they were all sitting in that church, smiling, clapping, expecting vows and promises, and instead, they'd get the truth. That night, Sadie twirled into my room in her new dress, a pale pink gown covered in glass beads that caught the light. Her wig was laid flat and sleek, her lips glossed in a shimmering rose gold. She looked like a pageant queen. "You like it?" she asked, striking a pose. "It's nice," I said. "Ryan said it looks amazing on me," she added with a smirk, flipping her hair. My heart didn't even flinch anymore. "He said that?" I asked, my voice light, casual. She laughed. "Even from his wheelchair, he's still got taste." I didn't answer. I picked up my white gown from the bed and began folding it slowly. Sadie dropped into a chair and crossed her legs. "You're really something, Ellie," she said. "A lot of girls would have walked away, but not you. You stayed." I turned to look at her. "Would you have stayed? If it were you?" She blinked, clearly surprised by the question. "Me? I mean, I don't know. It depends." "On what?" She shifted in her seat. "On whether the man was worth it." I smiled faintly. "And is he?" She hesitated, then laughed nervously. "You two are meant to be." "Yes," I said, folding the last corner of the dress. "Meant to be." Sadie stood up quickly. "Anyway, I'm going to get my nails done. I'll be back before dinner." She walked out without another word. I watched her go. That same head had rested on Ryan's chest in some dim hotel room. Those same lips had whispered secrets to the man who once kissed my forehead and called me his forever. I breathed in slowly. 1, 2, 3. Let it go. Just a little longer. Later that evening, Ryan's mother came by. She brought a basket filled with fruits, a Bible, and a white shawl. "Let's pray, my daughter," she said, placing the Bible on my lap. I knelt before her. She laid her hands gently on my head. "Father, bless this girl. Bless her womb. Bless her life. Let her never lack. Let her days be long and peaceful." Tears welled in my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. When she was done, she hugged me tight. "You are not just a bride," she whispered. "You are mercy in human form." I nodded. "Thank you, Mama." "You've shown my son more love than anyone else," she said. "You stayed even when he could no longer stand. God will reward you." "Yes," I said softly. "He will." That night, I visited Ryan in his room. He was lying on his back, a pillow propped under his spine, his legs motionless under a soft gold blanket. His face lit up when he saw me. "My wife," he said, reaching out. "Come." I sat beside him. He took my hand. "You don't know how much I thank God for you every day," he said. "I thought I'd lose everything after the accident, but I didn't lose you." I looked at him. "Why did you think you'd lose me?" He blinked. "Because I was broken." I didn't respond. "I know I don't deserve you," he whispered, "but I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you. Please, don't ever leave me." I touched his cheek gently. "I'm not going anywhere," I said. He kissed my hand. "I promise, no more mistakes. I'll be better," I nodded. "You should rest." He leaned back, still holding my fingers. I don't know how I got so lucky. And still, he never said her name, never confessed, never once looked me in the eye and said the words I needed to hear. When I left the room, I walked straight to mine and shut the door behind me. I pulled out the flash drive again, plugged it into my laptop, and played the video one more time. Ryan's laugh. Sadie's towel. The message at the top, "It's just for now. I'll still choose you, Amara." I watched until the battery died. Then I laid down in the dark and whispered to myself, 3 more days. And the world will see you. The morning of the traditional wedding ceremony came wrapped in warm gold sunlight and the thick aroma of fried plantains and palm oil. The compound was alive with celebration. Men beating talking drums in front of the house, women dancing with baskets of fruit balanced on their heads, children running barefoot, squealing in delight. Laughter echoed under the canopies. Neighbors popped in and out, helping tie ribbons, decorate chairs, test microphones. There was music playing from 3 different directions. From the outside, it looked like a movie set, flawless, joyful, worthy of every Facebook Live and Instagram story. Inside, I sat on the edge of my bed, my white wedding gown hanging behind the door. I'd already completed the final fittings the night before. Everything was pressed, prepared, perfect. And yet, I felt like a statue, quiet, still, cold. My hands moved automatically, brushing invisible lint off my lap. My eyes watched the activity outside my window, but didn't absorb it. Guests had begun to arrive from all over the country, cousins from Abuja, old friends from college, aunties I hadn't seen in 10 years. My mother's voice boomed from the kitchen, giving orders. My father wore his best agbada and paced the compound with a clipboard in one hand and a walking stick in the other. Everyone was buzzing with pride and excitement. Everyone but me. I could feel it now. How easily joy can become a mask, how noise can drown out the sound of decay. People called me strong, but strength had become a shell I wore, not something I felt. I smiled on command, I served guests, I posed for a few photos. And all the while, I was counting down, not with anticipation, but with purpose. Ryan, now permanently in his wheelchair, sat in the center of the room, dressed in a pristine white kaftan trimmed with gold. His legs were covered with a matching cloth. His friends surrounded him, clapping his back, fixing his collar, cheering him on. I watched him from the doorway. He looked peaceful, maybe even proud. But I knew better. Sadie danced past me in a glittering peach dress, her arms lifted high, her hips swaying like she owned the world. People clapped for her, some even whistled. "She's a fine maid of honor," someone said nearby. Another woman leaned in close to my ear and whispered, "Too fine for comfort." I didn't flinch. I didn't answer. I just smiled and sipped my malt drink. Later that evening, when the compound quieted down and most of the guests had left for the night, I returned to my room. I sat alone. The white gown still hung untouched, the flash drive still nestled in its pocket. I lit a candle and played the video one more time, just to be sure. Each image, each message, each voice note still intact. Tomorrow. That was all I kept telling myself. Tomorrow. The next morning, the wedding day arrived with a cool breeze and clear skies. Birds chirped softly outside as the sun filtered through the curtains. Inside, the house was chaos. Makeup artists arrived, dresses steamed, jewelry laid out like armor. My aunt was ironing my veil. My bridesmaids moved like a coordinated army. Sadie, of course, came in last, wearing a tight, beaded gown that shimmered like wet rose petals. Her hair was flat and perfect, her lips a glossy nude. She walked straight up to me with a bright smile. "Let's make you the most beautiful bride this village has ever seen," she said. I looked at her, deep into her eyes. She didn't blink. "You ready?" she asked, holding up the gown. I stood slowly. "Yes," I said, "I'm ready." 30 minutes later, the church was packed. Guests filled every row. Photographers darted around like flies in designer suits, snapping non-stop. Ryan sat at the front, his white suit perfectly tailored to his new frame. A gold cloth covered his legs. His face was composed, but I noticed the way his hands shook slightly. His best man leaned in and whispered something in his ear. Ryan nodded, eyes locked on the entrance. The choir began a soft hymn. The organ swelled. Then the doors opened. I stood there, draped in white, veil covering my face, bouquet in hand. My steps were slow and deliberate, each one echoing through the church like a clock ticking toward something inevitable. People gasped softly. "She's too beautiful." Someone whispered. "God bless this couple," another said. "She's an example," a woman sighed. But they didn't know. They didn't see the storm behind my smile. When I reached the altar, Ryan took my hand. His palm was damp. He looked up at me, red-eyed and trembling. "Thank you," he whispered. I said nothing. The priest stepped forward. "We are gathered here today to witness a love that has endured pain, trials, and deep challenges," he said. "Many would have left, but this woman stayed. That is love." The crowd clapped. I stayed still. The priest smiled at me. "Before we begin, the bride has asked for a few minutes to speak." There were murmurs, a few surprised gasps. I turned to the priest and nodded. He handed me the microphone. Sadie sat in the front row, beaming like a pageant queen. Ryan looked nervous now, shifting in his seat. I faced the congregation. My voice was clear and steady. "Good morning, everyone," I began. "Thank you for being here today to witness my wedding. This day is special to me. And I have a gift for my husband." Ryan smiled faintly. Sadie smiled wider. I turned toward the media team at the back. "Please play the video." The technician hesitated. "Ma'am? I thought we were only playing music." "It's already inside the flash drive I gave you," I said. "Just play it." He nodded and clicked. The projector screen behind the altar lit up. A soft piano tune began. Then the first photo, Ryan and Sadie, on a hotel bed. The room went silent. The next image, "I can't wait to touch you again. She doesn't have what you have." Then more. Messages, voice notes, videos. One showed Ryan shirtless. Another, Sadie wrapped in that familiar red towel. Then her voice, "She'll cry, but she'll get over it. I'm the one who makes you happy." Gasps, screams, chairs shifted. Sadie leapt to her feet. "Stop it, turn it off." Ryan covered his face with both hands. "Oh my God." The priest stepped back, horrified. People stared, some mouthing prayers, some covering their children's eyes. I waited until the last image froze on the screen. Ryan and Sadie in bed, smiling into the camera. Then I turned to the audience. "I found out 2 weeks ago," I said. "I didn't shout. I didn't cancel. I waited. I wanted the truth to speak for itself. You've all seen it." I turned to Ryan. "I did love you," I whispered, "but you broke me." Then to Sadie, my own sister. Sadie's mouth opened, but no words came. I took off my veil and handed the bouquet to my bridesmaid. Then I turned back to the crowd. "I will not marry a man who betrayed me. I will not share a home with a woman who stabbed me. Today is not a wedding, it is a funeral. I am burying every lie I ever believed." Then I stepped down from the altar. The heels of my shoes echoed through the silence. The crowd parted as I walked past. Some people cried, some applauded. I walked through the doors, into the bright sun, the white gown flowing behind me. Free. Outside the church, the world didn't stop. The sun still shone, birds still sang, cars honked in the distance. But inside me, something had cracked open, and not just broken but broken clean, like a shell finally peeled back to reveal something raw but real beneath. I kept walking, my steps steady, my face dry. People called after me, friends, distant cousins, one of the church ushers, but I didn't turn around. My gown dragged behind me, the bottom catching dust, but I didn't care. For the first time in weeks, the weight on my shoulders had shifted. A Kiki stopped beside me. The driver leaned out. "Auntie, you need ride?" I nodded, climbed in without a word, and whispered, "Take me home." Back at the family house, the compound was still full of guests who hadn't even made it to the church yet. Some were eating, some laughing, others dancing under the tent. It was still a celebration. Only now, it was a celebration without a bride. Then someone's phone rang. Then another. Gasps began rippling across the yard. Cups slipped from hands. Someone dropped a plate. Then I heard it, clear and loud, from a group of women gathered under the main canopy. They canceled the wedding. In minutes, the entire place was buzzing with the news. My aunt rushed inside. My uncle stood frozen with a bottle of malt in one hand. The staff didn't know whether to keep serving food or pack up the trays. It was like someone had thrown a rock into a still pond. Everything was rippling outward. The Kiki pulled up just outside the gate. I stepped out quietly, still in my white gown, makeup still flawless, veil now tucked under my arm. The compound fell into a hush. Every eye turned toward me like I was a ghost that had wandered back from somewhere no one dared to go. Some stepped aside. Others stared, mouths open. I walked into the house. My father was standing in the parlor, his face flushed, anger pulsing at his temples. My mother was on the couch, crying silently, surrounded by my aunties. They all turned when I entered. "Is it true?" someone asked. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. I walked past them, climbed the stairs, and shut my bedroom door behind me. I slid down to the floor, back pressed against the wood, and finally let the tears come. But they weren't wild or loud. They were slow, heavy, the kind that didn't just fall from the eyes but from somewhere deeper, somewhere only betrayal could reach. I wasn't crying for Ryan. Not anymore. I wasn't even crying for the wedding. I cried for the girl who used to believe her sister would never lie to her, for the woman who thought love was enough. Hours passed. At Ryan's house, his friends had helped him into a car. He didn't speak a word the entire ride. His mother was in the back seat, sobbing and murmuring prayers. When they arrived, he locked himself in his room. His mother knocked gently, whispering, "My son, open the door. Let us talk." No reply. Inside, Ryan sat motionless, staring at the wall. His phone had exploded with messages, missed calls, and social media tags. He was trending. Everyone had seen the video. The betrayal. The slideshow. The speech. One of his business partners texted, "Clean your name before we ever talk again." He didn't reply. He couldn't. He sat there, still in his suit, drenched in shame, gripping the arms of his wheelchair like they could steady a life that had already spun out of control. As for Sadie, no one knew where she had gone. After the church erupted, she had run, left her phone, her purse, even her shoes. She just disappeared into the city like a ghost in sequins and wig glue. Later that night, I learned she had shown up barefoot at a friend's apartment, mascara smeared, shaking. She didn't speak much, just stared at her phone and watched the video again and again. My voice, her face, the crowd turning, the priest stepping back, the slap from our mother. Over and over. "I can't face anyone," she whispered once. "You made a mistake," her friend said gently. "No," Sadie replied, her voice hollow. "It wasn't a mistake. It was wickedness. I don't even know why I did it. I just kept doing it." Back home, my mother came to my door late that night. She knocked once, then entered quietly, carrying a bowl of warm water and a towel. She didn't say a word. She knelt beside me and began wiping the makeup from my face, the way she used to when I was a child too tired to wash up after school. The towel was warm against my skin, her fingers gentle. "I'm sorry," she whispered finally. "I didn't know." "I trusted her," I said, voice cracking. "I gave her everything." "I know," my mother whispered. "You didn't deserve this." "No, I didn't." We didn't talk more. We just sat there. Two women with the same blood, bound by pain neither of us chose. 2 days passed. Then a car pulled into our driveway. It was Ryan's mother. She stepped out holding a woven bag. When I opened the door, her eyes were red and swollen. "My daughter," she said, "please. I came to say sorry." I said nothing. "I raised him wrong," she continued. "I covered too many of his mistakes. I should have taught him how to be a husband, a man. I didn't." She held the bag out to me. "Take this, not as a bride, but as my daughter." Inside were the bride price items, the wedding ring, and a small envelope with money. I accepted it in silence. "Thank you for coming," I said. She nodded, her face crumpling, then turned and walked away. That night, I sat by my window. The village quiet now, no drums, no clapping, only the wind. The decorations had been pulled down, the chairs stacked, the leftovers packed away, but the whispers had not stopped. I knew that. People talked in markets, on buses, in salons. Some praised me, some criticized, some said I was brave, others said I should have kept it private. But it didn't matter. The truth was out. It could never be stuffed back into a box again. I picked up a pen and a sheet of paper. I didn't write to Ryan. I didn't write to Sadie. I wrote to myself. "Dear me, you were brave. You loved deeply. You trusted too much, but you didn't break. You walked out when others would have stayed. You told the truth even when it hurt. You chose peace. Now, heal. I folded the letter and placed it under my pillow. Then I looked out the window again, watching the wind move the trees, watching the sky turn from gold to gray. And for the first time in many weeks, I closed my eyes and truly smiled. The rainy season came early that year. It started with low grumbling thunder, like a warning under the sky's breath, and then the water came, long, steady sheets that soaked the red earth and hushed the air. I sat by the window with a cup of warm tea, listening to the steady tap-tap of the rain against the glass. Everything felt quiet now, not empty, just still. It had been 2 weeks since the wedding that never happened. 2 long, strange, clarifying weeks. The village had finally stopped buzzing. The guests had gone home, the chairs were returned, the decorations long packed away, but whispers lingered. At the market, people still glanced at me a little too long. In the church, women still spoke in low tones before remembering to greet me warmly. Some came to apologize, others sent messages. But I wasn't angry at them. They had only seen what I let them see. And now, they had seen the truth. In those 2 weeks, I began moving slowly again, sleeping without jolting awake, eating without choking down guilt. I would sweep the front steps with no goal but to move, fold clothes, water plants. Sometimes I just sat and breathed. Sadie was still in the house, though I barely saw her. She didn't wear makeup anymore. Her wig stayed tucked away. Her phone was silent. She cleaned in the mornings, cooked when no one asked her to, and ate last. She didn't enter my room. She didn't sit in my chair. She avoided my eyes like looking at me was looking into a mirror she couldn't bear to face. Then one morning I heard a soft knock at my door. I opened it slowly, expecting my mother, but it was Sadie. She stood there holding a plain white envelope. Her voice was quiet, almost brittle. "I wrote you something," she said. "Please, read it when you're ready." I didn't say anything. I took the envelope and nodded. Then I closed the door. I placed it on my desk and stared at it for a while. An hour passed, then another. Finally, I opened it. The paper inside was wrinkled, like it had been clutched too tightly, too many times. The ink smudged in places, the handwriting slightly shaky. "Ellie, I don't deserve to speak to you. I don't deserve your forgiveness. But I need you to hear this. You were always the better one, better heart, better mind, better sister. I was jealous. I hated how calm you were, how loved you were. I hated that Ryan looked at you even when he was with me. At first it felt like a joke, something reckless and thrilling. Then it became a habit, then a secret, then a shame I couldn't escape. When you found out, I thought you'd destroy me. I expected you to scream, curse, throw things, expose me. But you didn't. You stood there, you waited, and you gave me something worse than punishment, truth. You showed the world who I really was. And now I see it too. I am sorry, not because I was caught, but because I lost the only person who ever loved me without condition. You, if you never speak to me again, I will understand. But if someday you find a small place in your heart where I can sit quietly, I will be grateful. I love you, Ellie." Sadie, I folded the letter and sat beside it, letting the weight of her words settle. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just breathed. Something loosened in my chest, but it wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. It was the first ripple in the direction of healing. Later that evening, I walked into the kitchen where Sadie sat alone, quietly picking beans into a bowl. She didn't look up. I grabbed another bowl and sat across from her. We worked in silence. The soft sound of beans falling between our fingers was the only thing filling the room. After a while, she whispered, "Thank you." I didn't look at her. I just replied, "Don't thank me yet." 3 days later, a letter arrived in the mail. I recognized the envelope immediately. Thick, cream-colored, with Ryan's handwriting on the front. But it wasn't from him directly, it was from his lawyer. Inside was a letter of apology and a signed statement returning the bride price, formally canceling the wedding. At the end was a short note in Ryan's handwriting. "I failed you. I accept my shame, but I will never forget the strength you showed. You were the wife I didn't deserve. May your future be bright, even if it has nothing to do with me." I folded the letter and set it aside. Then I lit a match and burned it. The next Sunday, I walked to church alone. No makeup, no jewelry, just a simple dress and a calm face. I sat at the back of the sanctuary. Some people turned when I entered. Others looked down. A few smiled nervously. The pastor gave his sermon on peace, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like the word didn't mock me. After the service, the priest came to me. He smiled gently. "You look lighter," I nodded. "I feel it too." He placed a hand on my shoulder. "You are free." 2 weeks later, I packed a small bag and traveled to Aba, where my cousin lived near a teaching hospital. There, I enrolled in a month-long healing program run by a counselor who, years ago, had walked away from her own wedding at the altar. She welcomed me with warm eyes and said, "You're safe here." I met other women. One had been left after her husband married a second wife. Another had her job stolen by her best friend. Another, like me, had walked out of a wedding that the world expected her to endure. We sat in circles, told our stories, wept, laughed, healed. We stitched each other back together with honesty and grace. One afternoon, the counselor asked me, "Ellie, what do you want now?" I thought for a long moment. Then I said, "I want a life that is real. No secrets, no performance, just love I don't have to question." She smiled. "You'll find it, and when you do, it will feel like rain on dry soil." When I returned home, my steps were softer but stronger. My eyes wiser. I smiled again, not for anyone else, but because I meant it. I started teaching again. I read novels on the porch. I bought yellow daisies for my windowsill. Sadie had started a small baking business in the back of the house. She still didn't wear makeup. She still avoided mirrors. But she moved with quiet care now. One evening, she knocked on my door. "I made banana bread," she said. "Want some?" I opened the door and took a slice. We sat together sipping tea. Then she asked, "Do you hate me?" I shook my head. "No." "Do you still love me?" I paused, then said, "Yes, but it will take time." She nodded, tears rising. "I'll wait." Months passed. One Saturday morning, while buying tomatoes at the market, a young man offered to help carry my basket. His voice was kind, his eyes warm. "My name is Caleb," he said. "Ellie," I replied. He smiled. "Beautiful name." I smiled too, not because I liked him, not yet, but because I didn't feel afraid. That night, I sat by my desk and wrote one final letter. "Dear future, I don't know your face yet. I don't know your hands or your laugh or your name, but I'll wait for you. Because I've learned that true love doesn't hide. It doesn't lie. It doesn't betray. And when you come, you will come softly, like rain. I am not broken anymore. I am healing. And when we meet, I'll be whole. Ellie Grace." Thank you for staying with me through the very end of this story. If you're still here, it means something in Ellie's journey spoke to your heart. And I'm grateful for your time. This wasn't just a tale about betrayal or heartbreak. It was a story about choosing truth over shame, dignity over revenge, and healing over hate. Sometimes, walking away isn't weakness. It's the bravest act of self-love. And sometimes, the ones who break you also make room for the version of yourself you were always meant to become. So tell me, where are you watching from today? I'd love to know which part of the world you're listening in from. If stories like this speak to your soul, if you believe in strength, resilience, and quiet redemption, then don't forget to subscribe to this channel. We share real emotional stories that remind us we're never alone, even in our hardest moments. Until the next story, stay strong, stay kind, and always choose truth.